The consumer boycott that was adopted in Port Elizabeth in 1985 had a very profound effect on the psychology of normal black people who were resident in urban areas, in townships. It was enormously empowering, and people really, I think it was astonishing how successful that boycott was, how much impact it had, not on the central government, but on white business, local businessmen, and how people felt empowered. You know, I mean, in fact, coming back to the previous point, when the consumer boycott resulted in troops leaving the townships and in the leadership being released from detention, as they had been arrested at the time, there was this immense sense of victory, of empowerment. Now, there were long-term demands which were not met. You know, like what people were asking for was democracy, for the release of political prisoners, including Nelson Mandela. And at that time, it didn't seem likely. It didn't seem on the horizon. It was a very long-term demand. But in fact, it was within 5 years that those demands were met. And the consumer boycott was just one of many of these kinds of nonviolent tactics which were used throughout the country, throughout the Eastern Cape. The consumer boycott spread from Port Elizabeth to almost every small town had a consumer boycott of one nature or another, often with different demands, with different timing. You know, it wasn't a coordinated national campaign, but it was enormously empowering. And people learned from each other. You know, they started to copy each other's action. I don't think it had a big impact on the government, except in as much as part of a whole range of these kinds of campaigns that were being waged in the townships. The government had to realize that people were really organizing, that they were taking control themselves. And in some situations, in some of the Eastern Cape towns, by 1986, the government was saying that it had actually lost control of those areas. People were so empowered and so highly organized.